The wind howled over the junkyard, carrying the sharp smell of rust, oil, and old machines. Piles of scrap rose like broken mountains. Metal wings of crashed ships, shattered glass from domes, and cracked robot shells covered the ground. It was a graveyard for forgotten things. No one cared what was dumped here, but Jake cared. He always did. Jake was a human scavenger. He lived alone in a small shack near the southern edge of the junkyard. Every morning, before the heat rose or patrols passed by, he searched the piles for anything useful: scrap metal, broken tech, or something he could trade for food. He wore a torn jacket, heavy boots, and carried a strong metal rod, just in case he ran into trouble. That morning, something strange caught his eye. It was buried halfway under a collapsed metal wall. Not a crate, not a machine, something oval. Smooth. Clean. Too clean for this place. Jake stepped closer and cleared the junk off it. His eyes widened. It was a capsule, about the size of a coffin. It had a glass cover, scratched and dusty, but not broken. Metal bands wrapped around it, blinking faint red. The design wasn't human. It looked alien. Jake had seen escape pods before, but this one was different. More advanced, more delicate. He leaned closer, brushing the glass with his glove, and then he froze. There was someone inside, a girl. She looked young, maybe 17 or 18. She had pale blue skin, almost glowing. Long white hair floated softly around her shoulders. Her face was bruised, lips cracked. Her hands were folded to her chest, as if hugging herself. Her eyes were closed, but her chest was rising, slowly. She was alive. Jake's heart pounded. Who would throw away a living person? And why? He checked the side of the capsule. The controls were alien, but he'd worked with tech long enough to guess their purpose. There was no life support sound. No cooling. The red blinking light meant low power. She had only hours left, maybe less. He looked around. The junkyard was empty. No cameras. No drones. Jake made his decision. He grabbed a tool from his belt and started working on the lock. Sparks flew as he forced the seal open. A loud click echoed through the scrap piles as the capsule unlocked. The glass hissed and slowly lifted up. Cold air poured out, and the girl's chest rose sharply, like she'd been holding her breath the whole time. Then her eyes opened, bright silver. She blinked, confused, weak. Her lips trembled. She tried to sit up, but couldn't. Jake stepped back, hands raised. "It's okay," he said softly. "I'm not here to hurt you." She looked at him, eyes wide with fear. Her mouth moved. She spoke something, a language. Jake didn't know, but her voice was soft and scared. She reached out with one shaky hand. Not to attack, but as if begging for help. Jake took her hand gently. It was cold, thinner than human skin, but she gripped his fingers tightly. He looked at her fragile body, her bruises, her broken state. She wasn't just dumped. She was thrown away like garbage. Jake whispered, "You're safe now." "I won't let them throw you out again." She didn't understand the words, but she stared into his eyes and tears filled hers. He wrapped his jacket around her carefully, then lifted her from the capsule. She was light, like a feather. She rested her head against his chest, still shaking. Jake moved fast, carrying her across the junkyard, stepping over broken bots and sharp metal. He had to get her out before someone saw as he reached his shack. He looked back once. The capsule lay open in the trash, empty, quiet, forgotten again. But the girl inside, it was no longer forgotten. He didn't know who she was or why she was. Abandoned. But he knew one thing. He wasn't going to leave her there. Not like the others had. Jake placed the alien girl gently on the old cot inside his shack. His home was built from junk metal walls, cracked solar panels, a heater that barely worked, but it was warm, safe, and far better than the freezing trash pile she came from. She curled up on the cot, eyes half open, still weak, her silver hair draped across her shoulder like silk. Jake wrapped her in a blanket, gave her a metal cup of warm broth, and waited for her to speak. She looked at him. Her lips moved, but no words came. She seemed scared, like she didn't know whether to speak or stay quiet. "It's okay," Jake said softly. "You don't have to say anything yet." The girl looked around the room. Her eyes moved slowly, studying the shelves filled with tools, wires, broken drone parts, and a small plant in a tin can. Everything was strange to her. Everything made her more confused. Jake sat down across from her. "Do you have a name?" he asked. The girl blinked, then looked down at her hands. She opened her mouth and whispered, "Name ... Jake leaned in. "Yes, what do they call you?" She paused. A long silence followed. Her brows furrowed as if trying to remember something far away, buried deep inside her. Then her head slowly shook. "I ... no." Jake's heart sank. "No. Name, no memory. What do you remember?" he asked. She looked up, frightened. Her hands trembled. "Dark ... cold ... pain ... voices ... Her words were soft and broken, her accent alien. She grabbed her head and squeezed her eyes shut. "They said ... I failed." Jake frowned. "Failed? Who said that?" She shook her head again. "I don't know. I just ... they threw me away." Tears rolled down her cheeks. Jake reached for a towel and handed it to her, unsure what else to do. He had met all kinds of people in his life, pirates, smugglers, outlaws, but he had never seen anyone so fragile, so lost. He gave her space, let her eat slowly. After some time, her hands stopped shaking. The warmth helped. The quiet helped. Later that night, she fell asleep on the cot, curled under the blanket. But Jake stayed awake. He sat near the fire, watching the flames flicker in silence. Who was she? Why did someone throw her away like trash? And why did he feel so strongly that he had to protect her? The next morning, she woke to the smell of food. Jake handed her some flatbread and warm tea. She ate in silence, then looked at him with unsure eyes. "You ... human?" she asked. Jake nodded. "Yeah, Jake." She repeated it slowly. "Jake ... Then she touched her own chest. I don't have ... name." Jake gave her a soft smile. "That's okay. You don't need one right now. You're safe here." She lowered her eyes and asked quietly, "Am I a prisoner?" Jake's smile vanished. "No," he said firmly. "You're free." She didn't seem to believe it yet. Jake stood up and walked to a shelf. He grabbed a small hollow mirror and handed it to her. She looked into it, startled by her own reflection. It was clear she hadn't seen herself in a long time. Her pale blue skin had small bruises. Her white hair was tangled. But her eyes, those bright silver eyes, still held something strong. "I think you're not a prisoner," Jake said. "I think you escaped." She stared at herself for a while. Then she looked at him again. "Why help me?" Jake shrugged. "Because someone should have, and nobody did." Silence filled the room. Then for the first time she gave a small nod. A silent thank you. That evening, as Jake checked the solar panels outside, he heard her speak behind him. Double quotes, "if ... If I was made ... and not born, am I still ... real?" He turned to her, surprised by the question. She stood there barefoot, wrapped in the blanket, eyes wide with fear, not of him, but of the answer. Jake stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're breathing. You feel pain. You feel fear. You're real." She didn't speak again, but her tears did. And for the first time since she was thrown away like garbage, someone made her feel human. The sound of engines shook the morning stillness. Jake froze, halfway through boiling water. The girl, still wrapped in the old blanket, looked up with sudden fear in her eyes. The hum outside wasn't normal. It wasn't from a delivery ship or a trash hauler. This sound meant trouble. Jake rushed outside and looked up. A sleek black patrol ship hovered just above the edge of the junkyard. It wasn't part of the local security. This one was cleaner, sharper, and marked with a strange golden symbol that shimmered under the rising sun. He had seen that symbol once before. On a wrecked lab pod deep in Sector 9, 2 soldiers jumped down from the ship. Their boots hit the ground hard. Matt Guard's hunters. Behind them, a scanner drone floated silently, red lights flashing as it swept over the piles of metal. Jake backed away slowly and returned to his shack. "They're here," he whispered. The girl looked up sharply. Her hands clutched the edges of the blanket. "They found me?" "Maybe," Jake said, grabbing a wrench and checking the hidden door under the cot. "We don't take chances." He opened the trapdoor. A small crawl space lay beneath, built years ago when Jake used to hide stolen parts. He never thought he'd use it for a living person. "Get in. Stay quiet. No sound, no light. Don't come out till I say." The girl nodded and slid down without a word. Jake closed the door and tossed a rug over it. Then he turned to face the noise. A knock came, not loud, not polite. Heavy. Jake opened the door halfway. "Can I help you?" The first soldier stepped forward. His face was covered with a dark visor, but his voice was sharp and cold. "Routine inspection. We've had reports of unusual movement near this sector." Jake forced a lazy smile. "Unusual? You mean the rats? They throw parties every night." The soldier didn't laugh. "We're tracking something. A signal. Possibly a stolen life form." Jake blinked. "Stolen life form? This is a junkyard, not a zoo." The second soldier walked past him without permission and started looking around. He poked the cot, lifted the curtain, checked the shelves. The first soldier stared at Jake. "You've been here how long?" 8 years, Jake answered. Eyes steady. "Alone?" Jake nodded. "Unless you count the spiders." The drone floated in now, its red scan lights passing over the floor, walls, tools. Jake's heart pounded. If it detected her heat signature, it was over. The trapdoor didn't move. The soldier finally spoke again. "Have you seen anything strange in the last 24 hours? Jake paused. "Strange? Define strange." The man didn't smile. "Capsules, wreckage, survivors." Jake shook his head. "Saw a broken food container yesterday. Smelled worse than your questions." The soldier stepped closer, his hand hovering near his weapon. "Are you hiding something?" Jake's smile faded. "Only bad jokes and old regrets." The second soldier returned. "Clear." The lead nodded to the drone. It floated back out. "We'll be back. If you find anything unusual, report it." Jake didn't answer. They left. Jake shut the door quietly and waited until the sound of engines faded into the sky. He dropped to his knees and opened the trapdoor. The girl was curled up in the corner, silent, her hand over her mouth. "They're gone," he whispered. She climbed out slowly. Her skin looked paler than before. "Did they scan me?" "I think so," Jake said. "But maybe you're too weak. No signal. Or maybe..." He stopped. "Maybe what?" "Maybe they were looking for someone stronger." She sat on the cot and hugged her knees. "I was one of many," she whispered. "Some ran, some died. I slept too long. They forgot me." Jake sat down beside her. "They didn't forget. They're scared. That's why they're looking." The girl looked at him, silver eyes shining. "Why scared?" Jake looked at the door. "Because you're not a failure, and they know it." A long silence fell between them. Then she said, "If I stay, they'll return." Jake nodded. "Yes, you'll be in danger." Jake looked at her, then shrugged. "Guess I'm used to it." The girl didn't smile, but her eyes softened. That night, she helped him rebuild the trapdoor with better shielding. She was quiet, focused, like she had a reason to stay now. The next morning, the patrols didn't come, but Jake knew it wasn't over. They were watching. Waiting. And somewhere in the junkyard, something else had woken up. Asterisk the air around her fingertips shimmered. She didn't notice it at first. She was trying to sweep dust off the shelf in Jake's shack when tiny sparks of blue light danced around her hands. She stopped, stared, and blinked. The lights vanished. Jake was outside, fixing a broken solar panel. The wind rattled the loose sheet metal walls, and the smell of oil hung in the air. The girl looked at her palm again. Nothing, just her pale skin. Too thin, too cold. She shook her head and went back to cleaning. But that night, it happened again. She was lying on the cot, curled under the blanket, when a strange warmth crept through her chest. Her heartbeat sped up. Her eyes opened wide. Her breath turned sharp. The fire in the corner flickered. No wind, no movement. Just her. Then the flame rose higher, dancing as if pulled toward her. She sat up, confused, frightened. Outside, Jake heard a sharp thump. He ran in, wrench still in hand. The fire had gone out. The girl was shaking, her hands glowing faintly in the dark. Jake knelt beside her. "What's happening?" "I don't know," she said, her voice dry and low. "Something's inside." Jake looked at her hands. A faint light pulsed beneath her skin blue, like lightning trapped in water. He handed her water, but her hands were trembling too much to hold the cup. "I feel full, like something wants to break out." Jake helped her lie down. "Try to breathe, slow and steady." She obeyed, barely. The glow faded after a few minutes. She fell asleep quickly after that, her face still pale and soaked in sweat. Jake didn't sleep at all. The next morning, she didn't wake up right away. Her body stayed hot, her skin glowing in waves. Jake sat beside her with a damp cloth, keeping her calm. He didn't know what to do. She wasn't sick, not in a human way. Something deeper was shifting inside her. When she finally opened her eyes, she whispered, "I dreamed of fire and chains melting." Jake frowned. "Do you feel pain?" "No," she said slowly. "I feel like I can break things. Big things." Later that day, Jake had to go outside to trade parts with an old scavenger named Marn. He told the girl to stay hidden, but she followed him quietly, peeking from behind the door. Marn was loud, rough, and smelled like old circuits. He handed Jake a rusted bag of food chips and said, "Your place still haunted?" Jake chuckled. "More like guarded." Suddenly, Marn's drone beeped. The small black ball hovered above them, blinking red. It had picked up something. "What's that?" Marn asked, pointing. Jake turned too late. The girl had stepped outside, watching them with wide silver eyes. Marn's mouth opened. "What the Jake, that's not." Then the drone moved fast. It spun toward the girl, scan lights flaring. She raised one hand in fear. The drone froze mid-air, its body cracked. Then without a sound it exploded. Tiny metal pieces scattered across the ground. Marn fell back, shocked. Jake rushed to the girl. Her eyes were wide with panic, her hands still raised. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. "It just happened." Marn scrambled to his feet and ran without a word, disappearing into the scrap hills. Jake looked at her. "It's okay. You protected yourself." "I didn't touch it," she said. "I know." They returned inside quickly. Jake sealed the door behind them. She's not just strong, he thought. She's dangerous to them. The girl sat by the fire later, quiet and thoughtful. She stared at her hands and said, "Maybe they didn't throw me away because I was weak." Jake looked up. "Maybe," she continued, "they were afraid I'd wake up." Jake nodded slowly. "And now you have." Outside, the wind howled harder, and somewhere in the distance, alarms started to ring. Rain started falling just before nightfall. It was sharp and cold, tapping hard against the roof of Jake's shack. Inside, the fire cracked weakly, and the alien girl sat close to it, her arms wrapped around her knees. Her silver eyes stared into the flames, but her mind was far away. Jake stood by the window, holding something in his hand, a memory chip. He had found it while digging through a wrecked drone earlier that day, hidden deep in a rusted lab crawler buried under the junk. At first, it looked like a useless shard of metal, but when he plugged it into his old tablet, strange words and encrypted files appeared. He hadn't shown her yet, not until now. He knelt beside her and placed the chip gently on the table. "I found something," he said. She turned slowly. "What is it?" "A piece of your past, I think." Her hands tightened around her legs. Jake opened the file. A blurry hollow played. Voices echoed, alien, cold, recorded long ago. Subject 47. Failed to respond to emotional stimuli. Memory reset recommended. Another voice followed. Too soft. Too weak. Orders received. Terminate or discard. The girl's mouth opened slightly. That voice. Then a third voice whispered, "She's not a soldier. She's something else. Keep her asleep. Maybe she'll forget." The recording ended. Silence filled the room. The girl didn't speak. Her breath grew shaky. She looked at her hands like they didn't belong to her. Jake waited, giving her time. "They called me 47, she said finally. "I remember it now." He nodded slowly. "They made you." She stared into the fire. "I wasn't born. I wasn't given a name. I was designed." "You're still you," Jake said gently. She shook her head. "I'm a mistake." "No," Jake said firmly. "You're a miracle." Her voice cracked. "They put me to sleep. Sighed. I didn't belong. Then they threw me away like trash." Jake leaned forward. "But you lived, you woke up, and you saved me. Doesn't that mean something?" Her eyes shimmered with tears. "It means they'll come back. They'll want to finish what they started." Jake stood and walked to the shelf. He pulled down an old, dusty box and placed it in front of her. Inside were wires, switches, and a small transmitter. "We can send out a false signal," he said. "Make them think you're gone, or lure them to the wrong place." She looked up at him, surprised. "Why are you helping me?" Jake didn't blink. "Because someone should have from the beginning." She reached out and touched the box. Her hands no longer trembled. Later that night, she whispered a word Jake didn't understand. Her voice was soft and clear. "What did you say?" he asked. She smiled slightly. "It's from my dreams, I think. It might have been my name." "Do you want to use it?" She nodded. "Then that's your name now," Jake said. She whispered it again, and this time it sounded real. Her name had been taken, but now she was taking it back. The night was too quiet. Jake knew something was wrong the moment the wind stopped. The junkyard always made noise, metal shifting, old machines humming, creatures crawling through shadows, but now there was nothing. Not even the fire cracked inside the shack. He stood at the doorway, holding his breath. Behind him, the alien girl sat with her back to the wall, wrapped in the blanket. Her eyes stayed fixed on the floor. She hadn't spoken much since the memory chip revealed the truth. But Jake had noticed something different in her. She was no longer afraid. She was waiting. A distant sound reached them, a sharp engine whine, cutting through the air like a blade. Then lights appeared between the hills of junk, bright blue, military-grade. Jake grabbed his gear. "They're here." The girl rose without fear. "I know." He looked at her. "We can hide." "No," she said softly. "They'll find us." She stepped forward, unwrapping the blanket. Her pale skin shimmered under the flickering light. Her silver hair fell down her back like a banner. "They think I'm still weak," she said. "Let them try." Jake swallowed hard. "We don't have weapons." "I don't need one," she whispered. Outside, heavy boots hit the ground. 5 soldiers fanned out. Their helmets glowed with scanner lights. They didn't speak. They didn't knock. They aimed. One soldier kicked the door open. Jake moved in front of her, arms wide. "She's not going with you." The leader raised his rifle. "Step aside, human." The girl stepped beside Jake. No, you kneel, the man laughed. Target. Locked. Then everything exploded. Not the shack, not the ground. The air itself cracked. Blue light burst from the girl's hands, brighter than any weapon. The soldiers flew backward like leaves in a storm, smashing into the junk heaps. Their rifles shattered. Their helmets sparked. Jake ducked, covering his head. When the light faded, silence returned. She stood in the center of the doorway, her chest rising and falling. Her hands still glowed, but her face was calm. The soldiers groaned on the ground, stunned, breathless. Jake looked up at her, stunned himself. What did you just do? I remembered, she said. I wasn't made for war. I was made to protect. Jake ran to one of the fallen soldiers and pulled the helmet off. The man stared up in shock. His comm device blinked, a signal still open. Jake picked it up. Send this message, he told the soldier. She's not yours anymore. She's not alone. The man nodded, terrified. Jake let him go. One by one, the soldiers limped back to their ship. They didn't look back when the engines disappeared. Into the sky, Jake turned to the girl. She sat on the ground slowly, breathing hard. You okay? She nodded, yes, but I feel like I used something that was asleep for a long time. Jake helped her up. Then we don't let it sleep again. She smiled faintly. They'll send more. Let them, Jake said. Next time we'll be ready. That night, they didn't hide. They stood on the roof of the shack, side by side, watching the stars. One of them had been thrown away. The other had nothing to lose. But now, they had something to fight for. Each other. Ash fell from the sky like snow. The junkyard burned in patches where the last attack failed. Charred metal smoked in the hills, and the ground shook from distant ships leaving the area in fear. The invaders hadn't won. They had tasted something stronger than their weapons. They had faced her. She stood at the edge of the hill now, barefoot on rusted steel, the wind blowing her white hair behind her. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dark, watching the sky settle. Again. Jake stepped beside her, carrying a battered bag on his back. That's the last of the fuel cells, he said. Ships patched and ready. She nodded, still staring upward. Where will we go? She asked softly. Jake shrugged. Anywhere. But here. She looked down at the wrecked capsule that had once held her. It was still there, half buried in the dirt, split open like a broken shell. Once, it had been her prison. Now it was just trash. Just like the label they had put on her. She stepped toward it, bent down, and touched the metal rim. Her fingers brushed across the old burn marks, and she whispered something in her native tongue. Then she stood up straight. That's not me anymore, she said. Jake nodded. It never was. They walked back to the ship Jake had rebuilt from parts he'd gathered over years. It wasn't beautiful, but it worked. He had painted one thing across its side, a simple word, written in the alien language she taught him, her real name. She stepped inside first, moving with quiet strength. She was different now. Not a weapon, not a failure, not someone to be hidden. She was awake. Jake took the pilot seat. She sat beside him. Her hand rested lightly on the console, and the ship lit up with a soft hum. It responded to her touch like it knew her. She smiled. As the ship lifted off the ground, wind whipped through the shack below. The junkyard shrank smaller with every second. The capsule, the battles, the broken pieces of her past, all of it left behind. Jake looked at her. You sure you want to go? He asked. She turned to him, her voice firm. Yes, because now I'm not running. He nodded and punched the coordinates. Stars stretched across the screen. Then she reached over and took his hand. Her touch wasn't cold anymore, I thought. I was garbage, she said, something they didn't want. But you looked at me and saw more. Jake smiled. You were never garbage. No, she agreed. I was never trash. I was just waiting for someone to open the capsule. Outside. Space opened before them like a door, And this time, she was not a prisoner in a cage. She was the pilot of her own story.